for the murder of Khashoggi. And if those kinds of diplomatic efforts start to be made again to shift away from those horrible, punitive things that we see in Saudi Arabia, how significant will that be, do you think, not just for Saudi Arabia and what we and the US do, but for the wider of just, dealing with states like this?
Well, let me say immediately that it's going to be very difficult to join the trial with some. It really is going to be very hard, and I have my reservations about whether that will ever be something we see happening. His own country is unlikely to do it. They are not signatories to the International Criminal Court, and so I think that's going to be problematic. But I suspect that we would be saying to him, I would like the world to say to him, don't travel. Because if you start travelling, universal jurisdiction could mean that we'll arrest you and put you on trial in the United Kingdom or other countries, or the States or in Europe or whatever. So the other thing that we should be doing is putting Magnitsky sanctions onto his assets, freezing his assets that he has in banks and in properties and things here until we see some kind of shift. Now, I think it's possible that they may decide there's nothing that the kingdom will hate more than being shamed in this way. You'll remember there was the famous documentary film Death of a Princess, and it was one of the royals, a woman who was stoned to death, and the allegation was one of adultery. And that shamed the kingdom, and so we don't have that kind of stoning to death anymore, but it does take other forms. And sometimes, by just taking somebody out, as they decided to do with Jamal Khashoggi, and the evidence was that his body was eviscerated and so on, and mutilated. So, what we have to ask is he going to be moved to one side? Will we get somebody different? Will the kingdom decide to actually move into the 21st century and give women their rights? And have a system whereby people are allowed to have freedom of expression and to voice views about how they would like to have a democracy? Are they really going to embrace the modern world? Because that's something that we should be really, in our diplomatic connections with them, should be insisting upon.
Thank you very much indeed, Baroness Helena Kennedy. Thanks for joining us today. A quick text here from Rames, who says, please correct your previous call, and not Helen Kennedy, it's in relation to the Shamima Begum conversation we had with the caller earlier on, who was talking about Islamic State. She joined Islamic State, therefore that's who she's a citizen of. I was saying that Islamic State was not recognised internationally. Rames says, your caller said Iran recognised Islamic State. It didn't. He shouldn't be allowed to spread serious mistruths like this. Keep your calls coming in on the Shamima Begum case, which we're going to continue to talk about. I'll be joined in a few moments by Andrew Mitchell, the Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield and former International Development Secretary. We'll speak as well to Michael Singh, former Senior Director for Middle East Affairs at the National Security Council at the White House. And that question of national security versus citizenship appears to be what the Shamima Begum failure to come back to the UK to fight her case actually hinged on in the end. Is the decision by the UK Supreme Court to leave her in that Al-Hol camp in northeastern Syria the right one or the wrong one?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC. From Global's newsroom at 2 o'clock, people aged between 40 and 49 will be the next to get the coronavirus vaccine. Government scientific advisors have outlined their plans for phase 2 of the rollout. It won't be based on occupation, despite calls for teachers and police officers to be prioritised. Dr. Mary Ramsey from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation says age will still be the predominant factor.
We would want a 50-year-old, 40-year-old policeman to come forward before a 20-year-old policeman. So, in a way, doing it this way makes that prioritisation much simpler as well.
Phase 2 will begin once all over 50s and the most at risk have been offered a vaccine. The coronavirus R number in the UK, which represents the average number of people each person with COVID will go on to infect, is estimated to be between 0.6 and 0.9. That's unchanged from last week. Alex Salmon has told Hollywood's harassment inquiry there has been calculated and deliberate suppression of the evidence. The former First Minister has begun his evidence session under oath, insisting he wants to move beyond the events of recent years that he describes as a nightmare.
It was the government who were found to have been acted unlawfully, unfairly, by apparent bias. I know that the Minister asserts that I have to prove a case. I don't. That has already been done. There have been 2 court cases, 2 judges, 1 jury.
He's expected to face questions for much of the afternoon. The current First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, who is due to give evidence next week, denies Mr Salmon's claims. Former Islamic State bride Shamima Begum has lost her legal bid in the Supreme Court to return to the UK to fight a decision to strip her of citizenship. The 21-year-old was 15 when she left London with 2 school friends to join the terror group in 2015. The government argued she would pose a real and serious threat if she was allowed to come back to Britain. Buckingham Palace says it's not expecting to get any updates on Prince Philip this weekend. The Duke of Edinburgh spent 10 nights at London's King Edward VII Hospital being treated for an infection. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 113 points at 65.38. The pound buys $1.39 and €1.15. And the weather, a dry afternoon with plenty of sunshine and light winds, cloudier and breezy in the far north, a high of 11. From Global's newsroom, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Joining us here at LBC. I must admit, I've only just seen this photograph of Shamima Begum as she is now in the Al-Hol camp in northeastern Syria. In the last half an hour, I noticed this picture on one of the websites. And she's in jeans, sneakers, loose shirt, and of course the temperatures are very hot there, and a quite fashionable sort of floppy hat, sort of boho floppy hat, to keep the sun off her face, and she's just